Hello, everyone, and welcome to our, I think it's the sixth day of our self love book tour. Self love, a gift you give yourself. I think let's see how many pages. It's a small 93-page book, Self Love, a gift you give yourself, that I published in 2016. I am Dr. Catherine E. James. I am an author. Actually, I wear many, many, many hats. I am privileged to be gifted in that way, and that's not a brag. It's not a brag, but I am one who believes in honoring one's self and honoring yourself and just speaking the truth about what is. And when we're gifted, we ought to talk about both our strengths and our limitations, both of them. Just talk about them frankly. And so I'm gifted to wear many hats. The two that are relevant for what we're doing right now is that of an author and a transformational coach. And so I published this book in October of 2016. And it has been a blessing. It has been a blessing to me and a blessing to many. How did we get here? How did we get to the publication of a book entitled Self Love, a gift you give yourself? How did we get here? We got here because I often would have the same conversation over and over and over and over again with lots of people, all different walks of life, both men and women, young and old, just about self-acceptance and celebration. So one example is I worked at a community college, Wayne County Community College, and on my birthday, I would always stop on the way to work, pick up a bouquet of balloons, and walk in with the balloons. And the first year that I did that, or at least that this particular guard saw me do it, she asked me, she said, "So whose birthday is it? Who are we celebrating today?" And I said to her, "It's me. It's my birthday." And she looked really puzzled and she said, "So who bought the balloons?" "I bought them," I said to her. "So you went and bought your own balloons on your own birthday?" I said, "Absolutely, because everyone else must join me in the celebration. I'm going to celebrate me first, and everyone else gets to join because I don't wait on others to celebrate me." I haven't always known that. I grew to that. And so it's those kinds of things and those kinds of conversations that would often have people to ask me questions. "So why are you like that? Like, I've never heard anyone talk like that. Really, you like yourself that much?" I have another story where I had a really good friend of mine when we were we were in a program together. In this program, we had to do mirror exercises. And so it was my turn to lead the group. And I passed out mirrors to everyone. And I asked them to look in the mirror and tell us what you see. Tell us what you see. So everyone did theirs. And then when it got to me, I was like, "Ooh, I love her." I love her. And he was so frustrated. He was like, "Nobody can love themselves as much as you say you love yourself." And it wasn't a fight for me because I did know that I do love myself. It doesn't mean that I don't have struggles. It doesn't mean that there aren't times when I have doubts. It doesn't mean that I don't have disbelief. It just means that I give myself grace very often. That when I fall, I get back up a little bit quicker, and that I never, ever, ever, ever speak negatively to me. I don't have self-loathing conversation to me. Nope, I don't do it. And I try really, really, really hard not to do it with others as well. And so that's how the book got here. And so that's the way that I live my life. And I do have challenging days. It doesn't mean that those kinds of things don't happen. So as a result of that and having conversations and others observing me, God said to me, basically, "I need you to write this book. The way you live your life, you find yourself sharing these things with people over and over again, and they benefit. So there are people who will never know you. There are people who need to read this book. There are people who need this kind of insight, but they will never see you and they will never know you and you will never know them. But if you write the book, they'll be able to get it." And so he told me to discipline myself. And it took me, I think, about a year or so to write it because I was undisciplined. I was. And he told me to discipline myself and to write the book. And so I did. And so we have it. So we have it. And so today we did have another guest who was going to be on, and she is unable to make it here today. And so we have Miss Joy P. Creel, who very often operates the back end of things. And you may have seen her if you watched the fourth session. You saw her sit in for me because I had a family emergency, and so I was unable to do it. And so here she is, the pitch hitter again. She's sitting in again. Hello, Joy. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Hello. How are you doing today?
I am good. Yes, Eunice, your book is in the mail. It's in the mail. No, it'll be in the mail tomorrow. It'll be in the mail tomorrow. That's it. Will. So yes, I'm glad you ordered the book. Thank you for ordering. I think you're going to enjoy it, but it will definitely get in the mail tomorrow. Thank you, Joy, for being you. Just thank you for being you. Thank you for being available. Thank you for all that you do, period, across the board. So I am looking forward to the conversation that we are going to have. So Joy is like, I don't know how to talk about you for these purposes. What did I say when you were the scheduled guest? Joy is a licensed professional counselor. She's a business owner. She has a 501c3. She has what's the other word for that?
Nonprofit.
A nonprofit organization where she provides free and low cost counseling for those who are not able to pay full out prices. Hello, Ellie. I'll never know how to say that. And sometimes I say Tosh, sometimes I say L. I don't know how to say it.
LL. It's just LL.
I always say Ellie. Hey, LL. And so Joy has, just like I wear many hats, Joy wears many hats, and she has many, many, many skills and talents. And so I'll just share a little bit about how I had Joy to be the first guest because it was very special to me the night that I realized that my book was on Amazon. She was the first one to purchase it and the first one to put a comment up there. So, LL, wonderful. Now I got it. Thank you. You are not alone in using that pronunciation. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Universality is beneficial. We don't feel like we're alone. All right, Joy. So I'm not going to ask you the questions that I asked you before because that doesn't make sense to me to do it. So we are both going to shoot from the hip or from the head or from wherever we're going to shoot from. So self-love, a gift you give yourself. I am... It's interesting because during our time together doing this book tour, I have found that individuals are really being impacted, right?
Mm-hmm.
Being positively impacted by the book. And so surely I've heard that before, but it's been a different experience for me to, I don't know, maybe hear it in such a concentrated manner. I don't know. It's been a different experience. So I'm grateful that lives are being touched and changed by the book. So you want to share any one of your experiences with the book?
I can share some experiences with the book. I have a couple of questions that I could ask you.
Oh, wonderful. That's great. Thank
you. concerning the book. As you're hearing how people are being impacted by the book in such a concentrated way, just because obviously there's a big stir going on with it right now, and there's a lot of things that you have in production and all of that. How do you plan to continue to touch those people who are talking about how this book is affecting them? How do you plan to do that?
Well, So lots of different ways. We have a 7-week course that is going to begin on June the 16th. On June the 16th, and it's going to be a deep dive into self love, where we really break down each chapter. So the chapters are self exploration, self discovery, self acceptance, self forgiveness,
Mm-hmm.
self appreciation, and self celebration, going into deeper levels of self love. And we're going to take a deep dive where we're going in. And so, all of our presenters so far, we gifted them with that course. So those specific people, they'll be in the course. The course is $497 for 7 weeks. It's $497 for if you pay full price, or $197 in 3 payments, or $197. And so that's one way in which we're going to dive deeper. We're going to do some other things as well, where we break down each chapter, where individuals will be able to simply pick a chapter and delve deeply into those. So that's one way in which we'll do it.
Okay, awesome.
I see.
I think Josh LL has a question for. She says she wants to know if she can ask a question for the guest or the host. Absolutely, please feel free. If you have any questions on self-love or anything like that, now is the perfect time.
Yes,
it's the perfect time to get those questions in.
Yeah, we got Jason. We got a comment from Jason.
Yes, we do have a comment from Jason. He says, "Hey guys, I love you both, and I believe you're absolutely awesome. So thank you so much, Pastor.
We receive that. We receive it. We receive it. Good afternoon, Letitia.
Hello, Letitia. Hello.
Wonderful to see you always.
And so my second question is, with everything that is going on, there's so much going on. Every time we turn on, I won't even say the news, because I don't even turn on news, but every time I, click onto my Facebook app or click into my Instagram app or whatever the case is, I am inundated with politics. I'm inundated with the current events and all of that. How, as the author of a book called Self-Love, how do you feel that self-love fits in the conversation, in the global conversation that's being had?
Yeah. So one thing is that if we had a substantial level of self-love, no one would be shooting anyone. Period. Period. You wouldn't shoot folk. There's no way that you understand love and then you can put your knee on somebody's neck. You just don't understand what love is, period. And then there is no way for you to look at another human being and denigrate them and, relegate them as subhuman if you had self-love. So I would beg the question that you don't really have love, period, and that you definitely don't have self-love. You've got something else. We can call it narcissism, right? We can call it self-grandiose. We can call it lots of things. We can call it selfishness up the wazoo, but self-love is not it. When you love, right, it's an accepting, valuing, and embracing of one entire self with an activating awareness that motivates towards the need to better your best. So better your best. And self-love, there's a chapter that talks about, my last chapter, it's about you. It's not all about you. That chapter talks about how when we love ourselves, it automatically increases our love for other people. When we give grace to ourselves, we automatically increase grace for other people. And when we don't do that, something drastically is going terribly wrong inside of us. It is not love. Love is this thing that's for the betterment of other people. So even when someone has done us wrong, we desire for their betterment. We desire for that which is just and fair for them. You see? And so that's that would be my response. And so one of the things that I would suggest to people who are trying to be okay amid this kind of climate is that they certainly take their journey of self-love, that they certainly increase, that they stop and they stop and they consider, who am I, where am I, why am I? What is it that I need to do? And when they find those things, they embrace them. and they accept them, and then they lean and give themselves forgiveness and grace. Celebrate yourselves. And what happens when we do that, beloved? We're stronger. We're better prepared to deal with whatever it is that comes our way. We're positioned to better handle everything when we love ourselves well. And let me just say it again. Loving ourselves automatically lends love to our fellow man. Automatically.
And I think that's huge. Like, as you mentioned about the book, where you talk about it's about you, but it's not all about you. And that's this idea of community. And so if we have this, if we incorporate our own levels of self-love, it plays out in community. And so it plays out in situations like what's going on globally, what's going on nationally, and so I think it's so important. I think that's key that we understand, like, this whole idea that there's more beyond what is actually happening. Like, this presenting problem is not the problem. The presenting problem, like the symptoms, what happened. Yeah, I mean, it's problematic, but it's not the issue. It's not the core issue. Yeah. And the core issue is this lack of self-love. And I think you hit the nail on the head with that one.
Yeah.
LL says, how does one begin to self-evaluate or self-assess their personal ability to love others and to have self-love? Is this a valid question?
Absolutely, it's a valid question. Their personal ability to love others and love themselves, basically. So basically, we start where we are. There are lots of exercises that I provide in the book. One of those is thinking about your thinking. And so I don't have a measurement tool, and maybe that'll be a good thing for a workbook to actually develop a tool. But say, for instance, but you can measure yourself. If I were to ask you on a scale of 1 to 10, when it comes to how you talk to yourself, if 10 is kind and 1 is unkind, where would you measure yourself as it relates? So when you make a mistake, how kind are you to you? When someone else makes a mistake, how kind are you to them? Do you see? So that's one area of measurement, or that's one area. We could call it constructs. We could call it one element of one factor. We can call it lots of things, but it's one element that we could choose to measure. We also can ask the question of when we set a goal. When we set a goal for ourselves, do we honor ourselves by keeping those goals? Do you see? If we make a promise to ourselves, do we keep our promises that we make to ourselves? Now, we all struggle. We all have, issues and those kinds of things. But how often, where are you on keeping your promise to yourself? Other questions you can ask yourself. If you come to the table, if you're invited to the table, do you show up at the table? Or do you say to yourself, I don't belong at this table? You see, those kinds of things, lots of ways that we can measure where we are. And so we've got to start at a point of measurement. And so you use your own scale, a Likert scale where you're going, strongly agree, strongly disagree. However it is you want to use, set up a scale and start measuring. The point is to start measuring now, because very often we're not aware. Very often we've not stopped to consider these kinds of things. So we don't have a measurement to know from which to gauge. I would say start now. Start asking yourself those very pertinent, introspective questions. And for yourself, how you're treating yourself, as well as how you treat others. And this is the thing. We kind of know already without a number. We kind of already know. We kind of already have a sense of if we treat ourselves well, or if we're really, really like hard on ourselves, like our own worst critic, that kind of, we kind of can answer those right out the gate.
Absolutely. And I think even to bring out what she asked, how do you begin to self-evaluate? I think that for me, how do I begin to self-evaluate? How do I begin to self-assess? Is to look at my heart and to look at my intent. What is my intent? Now, intent breeds action. So from the intent place, what is my action? And those things are measurable. Like if there's something if I can't do something because for whatever reason I can't do it, then do I find myself in movement? Do I find myself in action? You know what I'm saying? And so for me, the beginning of self-evaluation is intent, because when you want to do right, you'll figure out a way to do right. When you want to do better, you'll figure out a way to do better, even if it's not your default. Even if something isn't your default, when your intent is pure, you figure out a way to make it happen. You figure out a way to make it work. You figure out a way to push through the obstacles when there's a pure intent. But if it's something you don't want to do, you'll find every reason not to do it, right?
Yeah.
You'll find every.
Go ahead. The only thing I would want to add to that, though, is that the piece I want to add is the place of struggle. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. With intent, because we can have intent and still have place of struggle. So so the point that I would add into that is, are you kind when you have intent and you don't meet that measure? Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm not to suggest that there isn't a struggle, that there won't ever be a struggle or anything like that. No, there does come a struggle. That's why those obstacles are in place. That's what I meant when I talked about the obstacles being in place, or moving past obstacles, or whatever the case is. Absolutely, there is always room for struggle. And I do believe that when we struggle, and I think it's the question that you just asked, how do we now deal with ourselves when there's a struggle?
Right.
I wanted to do right, and something just happened and I couldn't do right. Oh, I'm a terrible person because I didn't do right. No, absolutely not. Like, I know what my intent was. Like, I know that I meant for this to happen. I know where I was going with this thing. You see what I'm saying? So for me, when I think about anytime I think about assessing myself, for me, it's a hard place to start with intent in order to give myself the grace. Mm-hmm. Because when I give myself the grace based on my intent, then I can, it helps me to be a bit more successful. You know what I'm saying? So, and especially with that, as we're discussing self-love, like, that's that whole piece, right? Like, I have to be able to give myself grace first. Like, I'm not going to always get it right. Sometimes I fail. Sometimes I mess up. Sometimes I do the wrong thing, say the wrong things, go to wrong places, whatever the case is. However, when I stop for a moment and say, okay, but here's what I meant to come from that. Yeah. Do you see?
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's imperative. That absolutely is imperative, because there are the idea of motive, of what it is that the intent, what it is that our goal is that we're going after. So we got to know that. We got to know what we actually have set as a goal. Is it my intent in the conversation to be heard at all costs?
Absolutely.
We got to be able to answer those, and beloved, answer it truthfully. At least be true to yourself. To thine own self be true. It's what I think it's Socrates who said it. To thine own self be true. At least be true to yourself. So if your goal is just to have it your way, because you just feel like that day you want to have it your way, be true with yourself, and be true. If it's other parties, be true with them too. Just say, you know what? I know. Today, can I just have it my way? It's okay to ask that. It's preferred to actually ask that, as opposed to do some manipulating kind of things. Because what's the intent? And so when we've set an intent, and because I've had to give myself grace many times as it relates to my weight and what I eat. I've had to give myself grace many times. I've spent a lifetime with the intent of being 185 pounds. A lifetime with that intent. And I'm not 185 pounds. I'm probably almost 100 pounds over 185 pounds. I probably am. As it's been my intent to drop the 100 pounds since my child was born in 1988. I gained 80 pounds when I was pregnant with him. I was sick a lot, gained 80 pounds. And at some point, somebody told me it was baby weight, baby fat. I still got baby fat 32 3 years later, I still got baby fat. So, Joy, imagine what life would have been for me 32 years if I didn't know how to give myself grace.
Absolutely.
3 years down the road, I met a lady in I think what was that? Burlington. I'll never forget. I met a lady in Burlington. She had a baby that was 3 years old. And you know, and we got to talking about the weight. I talked about I had toxemia and it blew me up and all those kinds of things. Kidney almost stopped functioning, all kinds of things to get the baby here, right? And so here I am, 80 pounds heavier. After maybe he's 6 months and I'm 80 pounds heavier or something like that. And she said, "Oh, don't worry about it. I lost mine in 3 years." I was so waiting for 3 years to come. 3 years came and went. Was like, I got baby fat. 32 years later, I got baby fat plus. Maybe not so plus because some things have changed within the last, almost maybe a year now. Some things have significantly changed, and I do have way more control over my eating and things like that. But what I really want the audience to hear is that if I didn't understand this thing about grace, then I would have suffered for 32 years.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that this notion of self-love inherently increases our grace for others, but our grace for ourselves, our grace to say, you know what, we're not perfect, but I can love every bit of my imperfection. I can love every bit of how can I not love what God imagined?
Yeah.
Oh, it's fine to love what God imagined when we talk about nature. It's fine to love what God imagined when we talk about like little furry animals and stuff like that. Like, why? Like, what does it take for me to love what God imagined when it comes to me? Because I'm a figment of God's imagination.
Yeah.
So if I'm a figment of God's imagination, everything about me, I have to be able to love. And so this piece about grace, I think it is so important. Even when we talk about the global conversation, like we have got to be able to extend grace to other people. If we can extend grace to other people in a racist encounter, then it allows us to walk away. It allows us to make a different choice. It allows. Do you see what I'm saying? This notion of grace for ourselves and for others is so important.
Yeah.
As we talk about this self-love conversation, and I think. Like that is the ultimate movement is to be able to live in grace.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I need everyone to hear that grace is not the absence of accountability. Grace is not the absence of accountability. And it's also not the absence of consequence, because every action has an automatic reaction. So if I eat a bag of cookies, then on these hips go the calories from a bag of cookies. Even though I've given myself mental and emotional grace, there's still the consequences of having eaten the bag of cookies. So it's absolutely imperative that we understand that there's still consequences, even though we can give ourselves grace, because sowing and reaping and energy begetting energy is a natural principle. It's an eternal principle. We can't get away from it. And so we want to be positioned to not have to give ourselves grace, because we still got some stuff covered, right? We want to not have to, but beloved, when we need to, I strongly encourage you, admonish you, beg of you, hold yourself accountable for bettering your best, for getting to your next level, for becoming brilliant and walking it out. But while we are walking on there, while we're on the journey, when we fall down, give grace to yourself while you're down so that you can get up. Because if you don't give grace to yourself, the likelihood of you getting up is hindered. If you don't give grace to yourself, you're going to stay down too long. And if you don't give grace to yourself, you're going to give other people permission to keep you down. So you're talking about a knee on somebody's neck. Talking about a knee on somebody's neck. We put our own knees on our own necks when we don't give ourselves grace. And this is the thing. When I've given myself grace, and I know that you coming to put a knee on my neck in any kind of way, I stop you afar off, because I can recognize that you are not for me. And so afar off, you don't even get the opportunity to get close enough to think you're going to do it. And so there are lots of ways in which we can look at that. And so let me just talk about it from the climate, from where we are in the climate. There are some things that I've done to make sure that to decrease the likelihood, and I'm using the knee on the neck metaphorically. I'm using that to say systematic racism. There's some things that I've done to position myself to be able to fight systematic racism. I have a PhD behind my name. And part of that PhD is because that is what was required to get a Black lady at certain tables at the end of the day. That if I wasn't Black, I probably can get to that table if I had a bachelor's degree. That's just the reality. That's the disparity in these United States of America in 2020.
Absolutely.
And so there's some things that I've done intentionally to allow myself to be able to get through some doors that it shouldn't even require that to get through some doors. And there are lots of things that I do to make sure that I have opportunities that will decrease the likelihood of a knee on the neck. But the reality of the matter is, until we stand up and be who it is that God has called us to be, until we stand up and walk our purpose and destiny, until we stand up and voice and demand some things, then there's still, even for folk who got all of the things that I've got, we still have so many issues that we've got to fight against. Do you see what I'm getting at?
Yeah, I do. Absolutely. Absolutely. And so this whole idea that grace does not negate responsibility. Grace does not yes, grace is necessary. Grace for ourselves, grace to others, and all of that. I completely agree with you. And like you said, this whole idea of positioning yourself, sometimes we have to position ourselves. And I think you are hitting the nail on the head.
Yeah.
Just because I have grace, just because I show grace, it does not give you the right to do me wrong. And I think Tosh put a quote like, "You're not gonna put a knee on my neck because I'm gonna see you coming far off." When I know something, when I know something bites, if I know a dog bites, I'm not gonna walk up to the dog that I know that bites. That does not make sense.
Yeah.
So grace or not, okay, I give you grace beyond the fence, okay, but I'm not gonna put myself in a situation. And so, like you said, there are some things that we can do to position ourselves to minimize marginalization, but it does not get rid of marginalization.
It does not.
We are still marginalized because of the color of our skin, because of our gender. There's some things that because we're Black women, we won't be able to encounter. Like, literally, don't get me started on my whole ministry story. But I'm just saying, like, there are some things that we have to. And there's so much grace that we have to extend to ourselves, but it does not negate the responsibility. It does not negate and it does not negate responsibility on both parts.
On both parts. Because
on both
parts. The reality is that I could get to the table and have higher credentials than everybody at the table. But when we look at the bottom line on the check,
come on,
it's not reflective of the credentials.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so there's something that we have to do. And it's this the whole self-love piece that we have to position ourselves. We have to know our value. And that's one of the things that you talk about so often in the book is understanding our value to the point that at the end of the day, you're not going to keep signing this check without the zero. Like, no, that's not what's going to happen. Like, no, we'll position ourselves. We'll put ourselves in the place that we need to put ourselves in. But no, because we love ourselves, we're going to make sure that we speak up. We're going to make sure that we say the things that need to be said. We're going to make sure that we do the certain things that need to be done. And I venture to say that is why we protest. That is why we speak out against all of those things, because we love ourselves and because grace and yes, we give ourselves grace, but grace goes on both sides. But just as grace goes on both sides, so does responsibility. Responsibility goes on both sides.
Yes.
So whether you're at the head of the table or you're sitting at the table or whatever the case is, you have a responsibility to yourself first.
Yeah.
We have a responsibility. And I know in having the race conversation, like Black people, we have a responsibility to ourselves first. to educate ourselves to the best of our abilities, to move to the best of our ability, to act the way that would be pleasing to God to the best of our abilities. We have a responsibility to ourselves.
Yeah. So the
Period.
life, absolutely. The life that God gave us is a gift to us.
Absolutely.
What we do with it is a gift back to him. So what kind of gift do we want to offer back to God? And that's the thing. Now, in no way, I need to say this loudly, in no way, if we never did anything, if we don't become our best, if we sit on the side of the whatever and do whatever, we don't deserve to be treated any less, any other than tremendously valuable. No matter what, without a degree, without a bank account, without an ID, without a place to lay our head, we are still fearfully and wonderfully made in the image of God. We are still beloved. We are still tremendously valuable. So it doesn't matter if we don't. I'm talking about the credentials to make a point, but I need to make this clear. Just the fact that we are human beings means that we are invaluable. There is no price tag that you can put on a human life. So under no circumstances is a human life to be taken and treated as if it is less than valuable. Now, with that being said, I want to make this point. With that being said, now, beloved, now that I said that, so we can put some folk on notice. Now that I've said that, I need you to hear that God gave you this life as a gift. And what you do with it is your gift back to God. And as Joy said, it is your responsibility. She used some different terms. I'm going to use these terms. It is your responsibility to better your best. It is your responsibility to increase everything that is about you. It is your responsibility to seek out your superpower and walk it out tremendously. So brilliantly on this earth, to understand that you are an unrepeatable, remarkable miracle with their own special brand of brilliance. You are. You are. You are. You are. It's your responsibility to know that. It's your responsibility to walk it out, because it's not about other people. But get this: when you better your best, when you are the best and the highest expression of yourself, when you are the best and the highest expression of yourself, you benefit. If you got children, they benefit. Your mom, your dad, your siblings, your sister, your brothers, your neighborhood, everybody benefits when you better your best. So you have a responsibility to do that.
Absolutely. And there's a place, I don't know where it's at, but it's in this book, The Self-Love You Give Yourself, because that's what we on. It's the Self-Love book tour. But somewhere in this book, you talk about this idea of people being precious. People are precious. And if we live out that space of people being precious, there is no way, like you said, we can put our knee on somebody's neck. And if we live out the place that people are precious, not only can we not put our knee on somebody's neck, we cannot accept somebody else putting their knee on ours.
And
if we just live by that alone, that people are precious, and if we live by this idea that people are precious, we move into a space where we continue to show that same that same respect across the board.
Right.
That same respect across the board. And you said something else. You about to say something. You go ahead.
I was just getting ready to say what you just said. Because if we believe that people are precious, then it does start at home, right?
Yep.
Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, the othermost parts. It starts at home. And then we move out beyond ourselves. We can talk about micro, meso, and macro. We can talk however it is that we're moving from the center, the individual on out. To community on out. So whichever way we want to say it, whichever model we want to use, we start with ourselves and then we move on out. What we understand is precious, we're going to take care of ourselves. We're going to take care of those we have responsibility to. But beloved, let me say, as a human being, as a real human being, then we also don't have the tolerance to see the knee on somebody else's neck either.
That's it. That's what I just said. Yeah, you can't see that and be okay with it. I believe that people are precious.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
I was listening to TD Jakes this morning, And TD Jakes is having an amazing conversation with I don't remember the other pastor, but it's a white pastor, and he's on, and they're just having the race relations talking. It's an amazing conversation, guys. Look it up and go, because we all need to figure out how to do this better. And he said, the pastor asked him, what do you like? What do you guys need from us, or what can we do, or something like that? He said, we need you guys to say something. We need you to open your mouth. And this is me saying what he said. He didn't say it like this. But we need you to open your mouth and say something. He said, and then he gave examples. He was saying in Venezuela, they needed food. And my ministry provided food. I didn't know them, but they were hungry. And in Kenya, they needed water. I didn't know them either, but they needed water. And so we made sure they had water. And he gave another example. He said, there is no way in the world I'm going to be able to see somebody with a knee on your neck and I don't say anything. And
absolutely.
I don't say anything. So self-love, people are precious, understanding that people are precious. When you understand that all people are precious, there is no way that we can allow that happen and we don't say anything.
Absolutely.
Somebody was just listened to something that that my husband had on, and what he said was, he said something along the lines of, he's Caucasian, and he was calling, and he was talking to his own folk, Caucasian folk, and saying, hey, you got to open your mouth. And it's not enough just to not be a racist. We have to be anti-racist.
Absolutely.
Anti-racism. It's not enough to just not be a racist. We got to be against racism, which means if you're against it, you've got to say something. That's what understanding that people are precious will do. It
Absolutely.
will cause you to stand up for people who you don't know, but they're precious. And so you'll stand up. Let's get to some of the comments. Eunice said, amen, amen. And LL, now that I know how to say, I'm going from bottom up. She says,
wait, hold on. Okay, go ahead.
And she says, I am an unrepeatable, remarkable miracle. And the other end says, with your own special brand of brilliance. You are brilliant and you have your own way of showing up, Miss LL. She says, we endure these things and self-love is essential to endure them. Just thinking out loud. And Joy, you say the rest.
We endure these things and self-love is essential to endure them. And so there's some other comments. We've got some comments. LL is excited that Dr. James is her coach, and Dr. James can be your coach too. If you visit her if you join the journey, you see it scrolling there at the bottom at drcatherineejames.com. LL says, speak about it. You will not put your knee on my neck. This notion of grace and grace for self and others is very important, and it is not the absence of accountability or consequence. That's Letitia just recapping it for us.
Amen.
And so there are several more comments. Eunice Shaw Peak says, oh my goodness, grace. This is a great opportunity and conversation for chancellor leadership.
Right. Yes.
Letitia says, my God, I needed this conversation today. I am my own worst critic. I'm sorry. My own worst critic. Ouch, she says.
So Lonnie and Reverend Lonnie Peaks and Eunice Shaw Peak, they head up a chancellor's leadership, the chancellor's leadership, where they provide mentoring for I think it's about 5 or 7 Detroit public schools. It's a really, really great program. And I am a part of that team with them. So that's what she's referring to. It is a great conversation, Eunice, for that group. All right. Thank you.
So I had a thought when you were talking. You talked about this idea of self-love and this whole notion of the responsibility that we have and the responsibility to grow it out. And so it immediately made me think about the scripture about the talents, the 5, the 2, and the 1. And this whole idea that one of the things that it takes, a major catalyst that it takes in order to live out that scripture, live out what that scripture represents, is being able to love yourself. And so I say that from this perspective, right? God isn't coming back looking for what he gave us. God is coming back looking for how we multiply what he gave
That's
us.
right. That's right.
When he gave that parable of the talents, one had 5, he multiplied it to 10. He said, all right, good, well done. The other one had 2, that he multiplied it to 4. He said, good, well done. And the one that had 1, he said, listen, I knew that you are a hard man. I knew that you were going to be hard on me. I knew that you reap where you don't plant. And he had these excuses. And oftentimes the lack of self-love will make us make an excuse for our lack of movement. For our lack of action.
That's right. That's right. He was afraid.
He was afraid.
He didn't have confidence in himself. He didn't believe in himself. He didn't believe in his ability to multiply and to add and to gain. He didn't believe in any of those kinds of things. He was afraid, and that fear led him to lose. It led him to lose. It led him to not believe in himself. It led him to not walk out purpose and destiny. It led him to be stuck. It led him to stick his head in the sand and then hope for the betterment of things. I've got all kinds of things going on. Joy, keep talking. I will be back in about 45 seconds.
And so here's the other thing that about the parable of the talent and how it relates to self-love. When we understand who we are and who God has called us to be, and how we can find ourselves accountable, we then begin to multiply. We then begin to multiply what God has given us. So whether it's a 5 talent or a 2 talent, we begin to put that thing in. We begin to what you call it, reap and sow. We begin to plant those seeds so that we can gain a harvest. We don't just put it in the ground and say, okay, when you come back, I'm just gonna have this one. Because again, like I said, God is not looking for what he gave us. He knows what he gave us. Can you imagine? And my screen is bouncing, but can you imagine giving somebody something and then expecting something else and then coming back for it? What he must have felt like, whatever the case is. And it could be something as simple as this idea of self-love that will bring us to a place that God is pleased with what we have. Oh, because you're hard, you're whatever. And I begin to make these excuses. Oh, I don't give myself the grace. Oh, yeah, God is hard. Yep, he is. But let me give myself some grace so that I can do something, so that I can move past my limitations. I can move past, even if that limitation is in my mind, I have to be able to move past it in order to produce. Like God calls us to produce. Yes, he calls us to grace. He calls us to mercy and all of that. But I believe that God calls us to produce. There's too many examples where he says things like, greater are the things that you will do beyond me, right? Absolutely. How can we do greater beyond what Christ did if we don't love ourselves?
Yeah.
Self-love is not a luxury. It's a necessity. Self-love is, we have to be able to engage in self-love in order to please God. There is no way that we can please God without loving ourselves. There's absolutely no way. And those things that you talk about in the book, Dr. James, being able to celebrate ourselves, being able to discover ourselves, all of those pieces, if we don't engage in those things, if we don't celebrate ourselves, how can we then celebrate other people? That makes me think about that whole prodigal son piece. Perhaps if son that was left behind had celebrated himself, he wouldn't have a problem celebrating when his brother came back. Perhaps. So this whole idea of understanding our value, because when we understand our value, we can celebrate. You told that story at the beginning of the broadcast of being able to walk in with your own balloons. Can we walk in with our own balloons? Can we walk in with our own celebration? Can we head up the celebration that says, Joy, you did a good job? Can we walk in with our own celebration? Can we do that? It takes self-love to be able to do that.
Amen. Amen.
Monologue there.
Amen. Lots of pieces there. Lots of pieces. There's so much that self-love can be I don't want to say a cure for, and self-love can be the answer. The answer. You hit on a lot of them as you were talking there. There's so many areas in which if we will embrace and walk out and increase and grow in our self-love. That lots and lots of things that'll be answered. On page 2 of the book, I said self-love is one of life's greatest tragedies. The absence of self-love, the absence of it is one of life's greatest tragedies. And it will allow us to celebrate those who come back, like you did when you talked about the prodigal son. It'll allow us to celebrate those who return, who didn't leave well. The more we love ourselves, the more we can forgive ourselves, the more we then will forgive other people, right? Absolutely. The more we give ourselves, we have that capacity to then to extend it out to other people. So it'll allow us to do that. It will allow us to speak up against whatever ails that there are in society, stand up against it, whatever it is that we would need to do. So, all the things that you just talked about, increased self-love better positions us to adequately address all of those areas. All of those
Absolutely.
areas.
Absolutely. When we position ourselves to love ourselves, we position ourselves to be an example. We position ourselves to be able to walk through so many places that otherwise it makes it much more difficult to walk through any place without this idea of loving ourselves being in place. So this whole notion of self-love, a gift you give yourself, it is just that. It is a gift. And it's a gift I declare that you don't just give to yourself, you give to the world. If you can give yourself the gift of self-love, the world, even if it's just your corner of the world, and I don't say just pejoratively, but even if it is just even if it's your corner of the world, the place where you have influence, it is going to be better. And that is something that I can say as a guarantee. The more you love yourself, the better your world will be.
Absolutely.
The more you love yourself, and I can, and I feel like I can say that with a level of surety. I can say that with a level of surety, because we don't speak in absolutes and all of that. But I believe in this case, the more I love myself, is a direct correlation on how my world experiences me, how my world experiences that ounce of self-love. Because if I love myself, I'm not going to let things go on. You know what I mean? I'm not going to allow things to happen. I'll take responsibility. I'll continue to walk after the precepts of Christ. I'll continue to do whatever those things are. But my world is automatically better when I love myself.
Yeah. God is love.
The more go ahead.
God is love. So as we engage love, we're engaging God, because God is love.
Absolutely.
And so there's no way to engage God and not be better. It's just an impossibility. Absolutely. So we can say that as an absolute. We can say it as an absolute. Absolutely. That we increase in self-love, we're actually increasing in our growth in God. And so thereby we will be better. One moment in the presence of God is better than a lifetime of attempting to do something in our own strength. One moment can transform us and catapult us into our next best, highest expression of ourselves. One moment. And so you're absolutely right. We can use that as an absolute. We can talk about it in those terms, because we are far better when we practice and we engage in self-love. We are far, far better when we take that journey and walk that path of self-love.
The universe responds when you love yourself.
Yeah.
The universe literally responds when you love yourself. So many things happen. Scientifically proven, right? When we love ourselves, we move differently. We're so we'll heal better when we love ourselves. Do you see what I'm saying? There are some things that absolutely change with the way that we love ourselves.
Right.
If we care for ourselves, if we love ourselves, we care for ourselves. If we care for ourselves, we're better. If we're better, our community is better. If we're better, our nation is better. If our community is better, our nation is better. If our nation is better, our world is better. If our world is better, our universe is better.
Yeah. And it happens on a continuum. So I want to give grace to our listeners. I want to give grace to the future readers. Wherever you are, That's your starting point. You don't judge your self-love by anybody else's level of self-love. Where you are is where you are right now. Accept it, and begin the process. And so I invite you to take your own self-love journey. You can do it by getting the book. You can go to drcatherineejames.com and you can get the book and a signed autograph book from that location. That will start your self-love journey. But it's not the only way, beloved. You can do other things. You don't just have to use the book. You can use lots of things. You can Google self-love. There are all kinds of tools and things available. I'm not here to sell my book. The book will do what it's supposed to do. I firmly believe that. It will do what it's supposed to do. I am here to start to continue this conversation on self-love, a gift you give yourself, to talk about how vital it is that we love ourselves better, that we accept ourselves, that we celebrate ourselves, that we forgive ourselves, that we appreciate the self that we are. I am here to do that. I am here to invite you on the journey and to instruct you in a way to help you to understand that the absence of self-love and the absence of a journey of self-love, the absence of increased self-love is one of life's greatest tragedies. Because wherever you are today, beloved, it's okay. Hear me. Hear me when I say where you are today, it's okay. It's
Absolutely.
okay. As long as you're not staying there. You can't stay there. You've got to go on and move and better your best. It's an activating awareness that motivates towards change for the better. So start where you are today with this conversation. Recognize that there's always a need. The self-love journey is a lifetime journey. It's not something that we get to. There's no destination to it, because whatever our best is today, there is a better over the horizon as tomorrow comes in. So I want to give you grace. Let yourself off the hook. Don't self-loathe. Don't get caught up in your history. Your history just is there to inform you. You don't have to allow it to dictate your future. It doesn't get to dictate your future unless you allow it to. Your history, your story, you stand on top of it, not in it. Let it be your platform, not your imprisonment. You take it and you run with it. You learn from your history, and then you go on into creating new, amazing stories. That's what you do. That's what you do.
Absolutely.
Amen.
Just Eunice Shaw Peak says, Jesus, carry us out of what we used to be and do. Thank you. God is changing the game for the world.
He is. I totally agree with you, Eunice. He is changing it. Things have been turned upside down, and he's changing it.
And Catherine says, I needed this. Thank you. Thank you. She says, thank
you.
You're
welcome, Catherine. You're welcome. Thank you for tuning. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for commenting. Thank you all for commenting. Well, we are nearing the end here. Joy, did you have anything to say as you want to wrap up your part of it?
I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be here. Again, another opportunity to talk about the self-love book, which has definitely been a game changer, has been a life changer for me. And I don't say that lightly at all. I say that just from a place of knowing that from this book, I've received both some instantaneous deliverance and also some I've also gone through the process of deliverance using the aid, using this book as an aid. So I'm very grateful for you heeding to what God asked you to do in writing the book, because for me, and not even just because I'm sitting here on this platform, like honestly, as a therapist, I have had countless clients read this book from a starting place, just because I know how it can affect and how it can change. And hopefully you'll be able to hear from some of those people. But yes, just again, thank you so much for having me on. Thank you so much for, just another opportunity. Definitely appreciate your time and your expertise. So thank you so much.
You are welcome. And again, I appreciate you. It's so much better having the conversation with you than having it by myself. So I'm grateful that you're here and that you are available and willing to pitch in and just have the conversation. Thank you for all that you do and all that you bring. Always, consistently bring multiple things, lots of times.
You're welcome.
Oh man. And so as we wrap up here, because we are right at the top of the hour, I want to thank you guys for your engagement. Thank you for joining us again. Thank you for being present during this time. It is that's distracting me. It is this is what God has birthed me to do. He has birthed me to have life-giving conversations. I've been put on this earth to, in this season of my life, I've done lots of things in other seasons, but in this season primarily, I've been put on this earth to help people live their potential. And I do that through having conversations and dealing with places of cognition, what we're thinking, what we're feeling, and our relationships. And from there, as we grow and expand, we can have amazing possibilities. There are possibilities that we don't get an opportunity to walk into because we have some challenges in the way that we emote, our emotional realm or our thinking realm. And I've been birthed to help with those. And so you can visit drcatherineejames.com and see how we might journey together. I'm a transformational coach, and I meet you right where you are. And then we work and walk out towards places of possibility. Friday, tomorrow, we will end our self-love book tour for our first book tour. It went so fast, and here we are. We've got one more day of our book tour. I've been tremendously blessed to have some wonderful conversations about this book that God inspired me to write. And tomorrow we will close out. We will be on tomorrow, which is Thursday. And I don't remember our time tomorrow. I can't see that. But we will be on tomorrow, Thursday. Make sure you look online to see the actual time. I invite you to tune in again. And let's see, the last thing I would like to say is Friday at 9:11 p.m., we will have on our 9/11 emergency series, we will have Mothers of Black Sons. Mothers of Black Sons. That's our conversation. We're going to have a candid conversation with 6 mothers that all have sons, African-American sons. And I invite you to that conversation. As you can see, we've got 5 guests, and I have an African-American son. So all 6 of us will have a candid conversation, what it's like to be a mother with a Black son in 21st century America. All right, beloved, thank you for taking your time. For those of us who you need to order the book, you can go to drcatherineejames.com and purchase the book there, and as well as look at the coaching services and opportunities that are available. At the moment in which Abba gave us his breath, each one of us, you and I, all of us, we forfeited the right to not be amazing. You are amazing. You really are. You are absolutely amazing. And sometimes we don't know it, but hear my voice. You're amazing. And I'm amazing. See you tomorrow when we come back for the conclusion of the first book tour of Self-Love, a gift you give yourself. Have an amazing day.